Hello, everybody. My name is Eric Hines. I'm curator of Film at Museum of the Moving Image. Welcome you to the Reverse Shot Happy Hour for Wednesday, December 23rd, 2020. If you're joining us live, welcome. Thank you. Feel free to chime in the chat throughout the next hour or so. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're joining us later on via YouTube, thanks for catching up to us. This is our holiday edition of the Reverse Shot Happy Hour. As you just heard a song from Eben Otter's Jug Band Christmas, we show that program very often around this time of year in the museum. But as you all know, of course, as the case is for a lot of other institutions, we're not back into our building quite yet. We hope to be very soon into the new year of 2021. But until then, this is our best way of gathering with you. And if you're finding us from very farther away than New York City, we're grateful for that too. And so you may not be able to join us even when we're back in the building. So we're going to continue to try to find ways of gathering with you online. And we're grateful for the friends at Reverse Shot for devising this happy hour as one of the ways that we can all meet up in this space. And with that, we have a lot of ground to cover, and I'm excited about the conversation to come. I will introduce the hosts of the Reverse Shot Happy Hour. We have our editors and founders of Reverse Shot, Jeff Reichert and Michael Koresky, and filmmaker and longtime contributor, Farihah Zaman.
Did I do it? Did I speak while muted?
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
It's bad luck if someone doesn't do it.
Thank you, Eric.
Of course.
I see that everyone has their cozy sweaters on.
Yeah, I wish I had like a really intensely ridiculous Christmas sweater, but I just don't. So I think I need to rectify that.
I don't in the Christmas theme zone. I have a few really ridiculous sweaters that I typically save for these seasonal occasions, but just doesn't translate to the Zoom framing. But I'll save it for when you get to see the
full effect,
the whole widescreen effect.
You get a little red and green going on.
Oh, thanks. So today I bought a Christmas tree for just me for the first time. I've never picked my own Christmas tree before. Yeah, I mean, I didn't. My family's Muslim, and that actually doesn't have any relevance because a lot of families living in the U.S. Celebrate Christmas without any religious attachment. But my family never celebrated Christmas. I remember once when I was like 7 or 8, I just really loved giving gifts, and I woke up and it was Christmas morning, which means like any other morning to my family, and I was like, well, I should really bring some holiday cheer, and I just wrapped up a bunch of like child garbage that I owned, like erasers, and I think I tried to give my sister a notebook. She was like, thanks.
Very fun to open. It doesn't matter what's inside.
Yeah, I've ended up with a lot of ornaments over the years, but this was the first time I guess like in past years, this time is so social that it didn't matter if I brought the traditions into my own home, and because that's a little bit lacking, I had to make my own garish fun.
How big is the tree? How big did you get?
I went for it's over 6 feet.
Really?
Kind of big for a single.
How did you get it into your apartment?
How did you get it home?
I had an assist with a friend, a potted friend with a car. And for anybody living in Brooklyn, I've long loved Natty Garden. All these street vendors were done, and they were still able to help me out. But I got it up. I was a little sticky and bruised, but I made it to happy hour.
Well, congratulations. That's
Thanks.
A big deal. And, it reminds me of just all kinds of traditions that we pick up and sometimes discard and pick up again. I think this is a year for traditions, for doing the things that make you feel comfortable, and to revisiting those, especially movies. We're going to talk about movies. Revisiting those films that bring us great comfort while also always trying to expand horizons a bit. On today's show, we're going to talk about movies, holiday movies that maybe not everybody thinks of necessarily as classics, but which might be classics to us. And we were talking the other day, Farihah, about this new movie that we can also bring this up with Nellie when she comes on, maybe briefly, because we don't want to spend too much time on it, but we took the deep dive into this movie called Happiest Season, because I think a lot of us in the queer community want there to be a really great queer alt holiday film. And this was directed by Clea Duvall, written and directed by Clea Duvall, stars Kristen Stewart, it has Aubrey Plaza. It seems like it's going to be this real tonic, this real relief from the onslaught of heteronormative Christmas crap. And it really was sort of traumatizing in its own way.
So Michael, you've heard me complain about this before in general, and I will connect it in a second, so just bear with me, that I think that the whole spate of children's television now, like this era of Nickelodeon, the humor just lies in people being assholes, like just 10 and 11-year-olds just like constantly being sarcastic, which I do not find charming at all. I know I sound like an old school marm, but I guess that's seasonally appropriate also in a way. And I feel like this sort of like factory churned out holiday movies have it's that all grown up. It's like weirdly mean-spirited under the guise of, hey, we're just giving you a comforting holiday movie. The brief bit of edge is exclusively from characters that are completely both two-dimensional and unlikable. I feel like if you're going to be unlikable, there has to be a purpose in the film or some complexity, and it's really just watching mean people be mean to each other, and it's supposed to be funny. It was there's no like queer ethos or kind of alternative. It's not an alt holiday movie at all. It's a pretty extremely mean traditional holiday movie that happens to feature some queer folks.
Sorry.
There is the one, Aubrey Plaza is a bright spot. There's a great scene in the drag bar. Everything else, no thanks.
What bothers me most about that movie, and what bothers me most about that genre of movie, and I have to say it's probably my least favorite subgenre of any movie, which is it's kind of the meet the parents template, right? Bringing home the new boyfriend, girlfriend, fiance, whatever, to meet the family. And the family is usually so grotesque. The family is usually so grotesquely wealthy and conservative and terrible and mean. And there's never that moment where the outcast, who's been made to feel like a criminal basically for the whole film, gets to stand up and tell them what they really think of these people. Instead, it's always about the person being welcomed into this toxic environment and learning to deal with it, because that's what you're supposed to do. And maybe there might be some terrifying truth to that, but the film's always, they frame that as kind of, the natural progression of life. And I find it actually disturbing. And I found it very upsetting here, actually. So even if there's some truth to it, the kind of catalog conservative horror of those families, they don't deserve these people. And I'm kind of sick of that ending. And I want it to be over.
Well, or if you're going to go zany, this reminds me, because in the last couple of weeks and returning to some actually pretty traditional holiday movies, that some of them are screwball comedies, are in this sort of like 30s era, and like Cary Grant runs around doing his thing. Like, you have to have a light touch. If you're going to go zany, you have to have a light touch. And I think that Happiest Season believes that it does. But in reality, all I can think about is how if my sisters spoke to me like that, I would be fully estranged. Like, it's such a strangely like retrograde view of women and women's relationships for a film that's been made about and centralizes a lesbian relationship.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm gonna cry. I like look upset. I just caught a glimpse of my expression.
Deeply unpleasant movie.
So isn't that a great way to start our conversation, to talk about, because this deeply unpleasant movie got us thinking about movies that are these kind of alt holiday films from throughout history that actually bring us great pleasure and joy. And that's why we've invited on two very special guests today to talk about some of these movies with us. And we should bring them on now, so they're not kind of alone
in the void. Come from the void.
In the Christmas void. Welcome, programmer and writer Nellie Killian and filmmaker Zach Clark, who's made the film White Reindeer. We are so happy to have both of you on. So I'm going to summon you with my Fantasia hands.
Hey guys. Hey,
I thought you were going to call them your elves. So I'm going to summon you, my elves. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hey.
Howdy.
Thank you for being here.
Oh, of course. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we're going to get off this topic real fast, I promise.
Are we?
I know that you also saw Happiest Season because you're also a Kristen Stewart fan, so it was like, of course I'm going to watch that, right?
Yeah. And
Well, it's also, I mean, a golden age of content, just in the sense of everyone has nothing to do. And I was like, oh, Kristen Stewart Christmas movie, I'll watch it. And it was, I mean, it's bad on many levels, including it's just bad. I mean, it's a bad movie. Like, it's like there's sort of no way to sort of root for the main I mean, it's remains confusing throughout the movie that the main character is the main character because she's so deeply unsympathetic. And I think what you were saying about sort of two-dimensional characters is right, because I mean, primarily what I watch is a lot of like classic Hollywood and stuff where a lot of people are playing types, but like they're doing it with such verve that like it's a total pleasure to behold, and like it does add something. But this is like, it's like the barista on a sitcom that doesn't have a name. like the main characters on that movie. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's one of those genres where, I mean, this is part of why we came to this topic, is it's like, it's so pleasurable to find a legitimately great, even if you don't have a childhood attachment to the holiday season, it's so great to find a film set in this time period that's legitimately just good and has cinematic value, because I think it's one of those genres that gives itself a pass. Like a lot of times people are like, well, it's just a Christmas movie. We've talked about others like that on the show before, like biopics or, you know, romantic comedies, the idea that because it's this genre, you don't have to try or kind of create, I don't know, an experience in the same way. And I'm glad that not everybody subscribes to that.
Yeah, and I mean, Zach might want to speak to that specifically as someone who made an incredible Christmas movie.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, there appears to be a large subset of movies that's not just Christmas movies, but there's this whole sort of Christmas rom-com amount of stuff that just gets churned out every year. And then you get these sort of, you know, these Hollywood children's movies, which are much higher budgeted, but also seem to be made with a similar sense of cynicism, but just like, I don't know, the audience this movie's intended for will just watch it. It doesn't matter what the quality level is. But I don't know, I've always loved Christmas movies. I made a Christmas movie because I always loved watching them. Like, you know, a good Christmas movie you watch every single year. There are movies I watch every single year at Christmas time. And so good Christmas movies are like kind of forever in a way, because even my other favorite movies of all time that aren't Christmas movies, I don't have I'm not like, oh, it's March, I have to watch, I don't know, Faster Pussycat Kill Kill. You know, it's not like there's no like, you know, it's every single December I have to watch X, Y, and Z. You know,
what are X, Y, and Z? Yeah.
I don't know. I made
documentarian pressure.
This is good. I made I just made stacks of all my Christmas movies that I brought.
Oh, hold it up closer.
Right
You brought a visual aid.
This is half of.
I see the Criterion Fanny Alexander.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So that's a great one. And then this is the rest of it. This is everything.
Oh wow, this is including.
Will you read us some titles, please?
There's a VHS.
Yeah. There's
this is Elves.
Yeah, Elves is phenomenal. I'll go on about Elves later. But Emmett Otter, Jug Band Christmas, already discussed. I would watch that every year with my sister.
We discussed it beforehand, but we didn't discuss it on the show.
Oh yes.
Because we played the song at the top.
So Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas is an incredible Jim Henson production. It's like an hour long. It's hosted by Kermit. Kermit shows up in the beginning, at the end, but there are no other canon Muppets in it. And it's about a little otter family that's like just trying to get by. And there's like a gift of the Magi scenario, and there's a battle of the band. There's a metal band that's the bad guys. that are also trying to win the talent show. And it's just, it just presents this really beautiful message, which is maybe super appropriate for this year, which is like, Christmas is about like reaching out to other people and like making do. It's a movie of just like do the best with what you have. And like don't forget the people closest to you. And
I feel like
it's all with puppets.
I was obsessed with that growing up. That I used to watch that show every year, and I still watch it every year. But thinking of that and thinking of Charlie Brown Christmas and the things that we watched growing up, they were very melancholy. These were very melancholy shows about just getting by with what you have. I think that's
I mean, I even think, there is, to me, a real sadness at the heart of like the Rankin Bass, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. That island of misfit toys is like terribly sad. And this sort of sense of like camaraderie amongst outsiders, I think, is really beautiful in the Rankin Bass, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And just the way that lighting, there's a shot of the like little girl doll on the island of misfit toys that to me like evokes that shot of Jane Wyman at the window in All That Heaven Allows. There's this real sense of like longing in that movie.
And the basis of it is being excluded based on your physical appearance. Like I watched, the classic little 25-minute Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer with my niece recently, and was reminded like they don't shy away from discussing the cruelty of children, right? It's like, and all of the sort of authority figures, everyone but Santa is sort of like, you're gross. You don't belong with us. It's, rooted in something kind of dark.
I mean, I was thinking about that as I was watching, like looking through my list of Christmas movies and watching a couple things I'd always meant to see for this. And I guess I was thinking about this idea of like alternative Christmas and being like, well, all these movies are sad. And then I was like, actually, all Christmas movies are sad. Like even the most classic Christmas movie is ultimately about this sort of joyful celebration that you have some sort of inability to completely connect with until maybe you do at the end or maybe not. That like that sort of sadness is so central to Christmas movies.
It's a Wonderful Life is just one of the most depressing movies ever made. Bad Santa is deeply, deeply sad.
White Christmas, I find, maybe not as sad as It's a Wonderful Life, but it's certainly melancholy.
Yeah.
Deeply melancholy.
About the war. Yeah, no, all these films are. So aside from the films that are kind of the canon Christmas movies that we always talk about, what for each of you, what is a film that you consider like an alternative holiday film that you always return to, that you want to bring to the viewers today? Whoever can.
Well, I will say, I don't know if my two, I have three. One is definitely something that most people probably don't watch, but Remember the Night and Christmas in Connecticut are my sort of more traditional every year Christmas movies, both Barbara Stanwyck, the Queen of Christmas. And the third that I know is a little more obscure is Jerome Hill's Merry Christmas, which is this like beautiful 3-minute experimental film, 16 millimeter, that is sort of on the streets of New York in the 60s. You're seeing this kind of like documentary footage of people sort of out and about in the sort of shopping season. And there's this sort of hand-painted image of Mary and Joseph with the donkey sort of walking through the streets trying to find like place at a hotel. And this sort of interplay of this kind of like beautiful hand-painted imagery, like super sort of ethereal image, like moving through this like very sort of hustle and bustle, like commercial Midtown New York atmosphere is just really, really moving. And it's just like a perfect little movie, and it's available. I saw that you put the link in there. It's on Vimeo, totally legit, through the Jerome Foundation. I should mention Jerome Hill's like one of the founders of Anthology Film Archives, and someone who I think gets a little less attention than a lot of the other filmmakers who are sort of central to the founding. His work is all like really, really beautiful. And this is a sort of perfect little holiday treat to get you interested in his work.
Thank you for sharing that. That was really an amazing film. Thank you.
Yeah, the moment in the film, so the hand painted figures are sort of walking through these spaces, but then all of a sudden towards the end when there's an interaction with somebody who's on the street but has been clearly asked to do certain things so that way that he could be painted onto later. I'm thinking of the bellhop outside the hotel. It just like, it blew my mind. It really did.
Yeah, there's like a couple like moments where there's like this connection, like even like just with the diegetic bell of the Salvation Army and the bellhop, where you get this sense that it really connects this hand-painted imagery to what's going on in a way that it feels like completely organic. I mean, it's a really moving film. And I will say, like, it's also like in some ways the most traditional. Like I was trying to think, are there that many movies that are about Mary and Jesus, the story of like the birth of Christ? I don't, like, of all the biblical epics, that doesn't seem like one that has like a standard bearer. Am I wrong?
Pops up in, like the first 10 minutes of Ben-Hur is all about birth, and then it just forgets about. I mean, it becomes about obviously Judah Ben-Hur, but there are. It's not like the central story in those epics. It's true.
Yeah, it's sort. I mean, it is like in that sense so traditional, but obviously done in like a very untraditional way. But it made me realize how that story isn't actually something that's told cinematically. You know,
Certainly not in this gorgeous way.
Yeah.
What's one of your films, Zach, that you wanted to talk about?
I'll talk about. Well, I don't have to bring up.
There are just so many.
I have to bring up the DVD for
I'm just
everything.
going down the stack.
One of my favorites, the one I watched the most recently, is Santa Claus by Rene Cardona, which is a 1959 Mexican children's movie, which I saw for the first time on Mystery Science Theater 3000. It's notoriously the movie where Satan sends a devil to Earth to fuck with Santa Claus's plans. And there is a little girl named Lupita who just wants a doll for Christmas. And then there are like a group of like 3 little ruffian boys who are running around sort of causing trouble that the devil is egging on. But you know, I came into movies through cult movies. That's what sort of got me interested in them. And then I watched enough of them that I stopped enjoying them for their like lack of traditional quality, and enjoying them for what they have to offer. And what Santa Claus has to offer are these like incredibly beautiful, strange, surreal set pieces. Santa lives in a castle in the clouds, and the reindeer are all these white robots, and he watches children with a giant eyeball that shoots out. And there's this, there's an incredible sequence with these dancing dolls that's also very scary and sinister. It's just a really strange, beautiful, fun movie. I watch that every year.
Which I have not seen.
It's so good.
And where can we see that? That sounds amazing.
I own it on Blu-ray.
Oh, we can't come to your house.
Who put it out? VCI put it out. I think it's like pretty public domain as well, if I'm correct. So it might just be on YouTube or something else. It should be easily either rentable or streamable through some means.
When you first mentioned it, I was terrified that you were talking about Santa Claus the movie, the execrable 1985.
No, I love, no. I haven't seen that one in a long time. But the Rene Cardona one, it's a really, really beautiful, like almost, it's like Buñuel made a children's Christmas movie, basically.
I think there's so much room for there to be surreal imagery in Christmas films that it's really disappointing when you watch a movie that remains so kind of staid or cliched in its imagery. You have such license to do so many things, and so few Christmas movies really go there. You know, really take you to new places. I'm often talking about this really disturbing 1985 movie called One Magic Christmas, which I'm forgive me if I've brought this up too many times. But
what happened?
What was that?
All right, try to find the Santa Claus movie. I think I found it, but then there was an ad. So,
Wait,
But then
one
you
is
just
the
started
one-
watching it.
well, I clicked on it to see if it was the thing. Sorry. But look, America's most famous sandwich is shipped nationwide by goldbelly.com.
Fantastic. Has anyone else here seen One Magic Christmas with Mary
I haven't.
Steenburgen and Harry Dean Stanton?
No, and it's an incredible cast. Like I'm so drawn to everything about it on paper. Please say more.
I'm not going to give away what happens, but let's just say Harry Dean Stanton, perfectly cast as a Christmas angel who comes down to earth to teach Mary Steenburgen the meaning of Christmas. And he does it in such an incredibly violent and disturbing way. You're never going to forget this. I would say pure trauma.
All right, can't
And
wait.
of course, she's
Noted.
in Happiest Season, so perhaps you enjoy
She-
her punishment.
She's maybe
I am obsessed with her, generally. I think she always adds something. Like, great actress. Very disappointing in Happiest Season. There's the one moment where she takes karate lessons where I'm happy for her.
I mean, she
Yeah.
even is a bright spot in Elf,
Yeah.
which is like I think a very watchable, become a classic for a reason. If it's on TV, my family's like, sure, let's do it. She's a great part of that. I mean, she has a good track record in holiday movies of all stripes, and they just really misused her, I felt.
He's also in Four Christmases, which is one of the all-time worst Christmas movies.
That I've never seen.
Reese
Ooh,
Witherspoon.
no way.
It's like mind-numbingly dreadful.
Here's a new classic for me, and I'm curious if any of you guys have seen it. I've watched it twice this year, but it was the first time I've watched it twice this week, but it's the first time I've seen it. The Kate Bush Christmas special.
I was just alerted to this Christmas
I
special.
was
haven't
just
watched it
alerted
yet.
to this Christmas special by you, Nellie. I was like reading the email and I was like, wait, what? And then did a little deep dive, but haven't gotten to watch it yet.
It has nothing to do with Christmas. I mean, like there is like maybe one song, and it's just kind of a spectacular. It's like a pageant, you know,
Yeah.
with her and special guest Peter Gabriel.
What a
doing-
dream.
Yeah, like there's like one like green screen over Egypt number, like one at one point it's like Eric Satie and like two people dressed as violins dancing.
A very surrealist holiday-ish
This
movie.
is what I'm looking for.
I mean, I think that people are very open to like alternative sort of forms in the holidays, like a pageant on television or something is
Right.
We're like, well, it's the holidays, of course. And like you just give the reins to like a 24-year-old art student and like let her go wild, and like what you get is the Kate Bush Christmas special. Peter Gabriel sings Here Comes the Flood, which, while not a Christmas song, now in my head is like synonymous with the melancholy of Christmas.
Is it biblical? Is it a Noah reference?
I think so now.
Okay. I mean, sure. You know what? Art is open to interpretation. I don't want to tell anybody what to think. I mean,
That
I
is
think
now what I think. Yeah.
I'm glad we're touching on the variety show tradition, because I think it's not surprising that this was brought to our shores by a British artist. Like, I think that there are cultures that have continued a familiarity with this format and an appreciation for this format. And anytime, like, remember staying with the family of a French person, and it was like variety show all damn day on Christmas, which was pretty enjoyable. And I feel like in the US, it's the only time of year that we still understand that format. Otherwise, it's considered sort of old fashioned, but we're like, no, it's time for variety.
Yeah, like a stage bound production. Like, why not?
The Mariah Carey thing, which I just watched recently, is that
Oh,
exactly.
I meant to watch that before this. I'm so curious.
I want to hear your take, Zach.
On the Mariah Carey thing, well, I watched that and the Dolly Parton thing.
There was
Pretty
much more
open.
plot in the Mariah Carey special than I was expecting.
Oh, there was less plot than I wanted. I'll say that.
Less than I wanted, but more than I expected.
Less than I wanted. I think it's fine. The music itself isn't my favorite thing, so it was. I can appreciate the sort of like knowing campiness of the whole thing, and I can appreciate like the costume changes and all that stuff. But it's hard for me to like have a thing to hold on to, just because it's just not what I listen to at Christmas. That
What
kind of
was
music just isn't
What was
it.
the other special that you mentioned watching?
The Dolly Parton
Dolly
one,
Parton.
which is a must see, incredible train wreck. It's so strange.
Christmas on the Square.
Yeah, it's so strange.
And her I guess like self-exec produced documentary on her life is out now
yeah,
too.
yeah.
So she's just
But it doesn't
Dolly's
have
popping up all over.
Christmas in the title, so I haven't.
No,
I haven't seen
no.
it yet.
The one other Christmas special I considered watching for this but didn't get to was apparently like 5 or 6 years ago there was an En Vogue Christmas special reunion.
Oh my God, I forgot that existed, and it's so good.
The tagline was something like, "They asked us to get together over and over again, and we said no. But this time they asked us to get together at Christmas." And I was like, perfect.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Also, like, they don't have any Christmas songs that I remember.
I don't remember any Christmas renditions of anything from
Yeah.
her.
No, I don't think so.
Or, I mean, maybe they did, but they weren't the hits. Yeah. Yeah.
But who knows? People are putting them out all the time. Like John Bon Jovi, I think, just put out a Christmas record this year.
Oh
Just-
yeah, he did a cover of Fairy Tale
Tale
of
of New
Christmas of New York. Sorry, Fairy Tale of New York, and the the Pogues commented on it. They were like, "We don't do this often, but we want you to know that we know this is bad, and please take
Yeah.
it back."
Well, Bon Jovi makes the bold choice to do both parts himself and change the lyrics. It's quite special. I'll see if I can find that. 'cause
Like
it's-
the Tom Hanks Christmas movie, which is called what? Polar Express.
Polar Express.
Yeah, he's like, "I will be playing all the parts."
I'm still terrified by that film. Terrified.
I can't see it because it looks too scary.
It's just dreadful looking.
I was trying to when we
It's that
started
uncanny
talking
valley
about
thing.
this topic, I was trying to remember not the holiday films that sort of struck me as an older person, which was when I actually had more of an access point to Christmas specifically, because that's a little unfair or something. Like, sure, I was already working in film or cinephile. I was trying to think of like what struck me as a child, because it was such a hard filter. Like, I didn't watch Christmas movies with my family. It was like what stayed with me. And the one more traditional one is Shop Around the Corner. Like, I think my mom, it really dovetails with my mom's general taste for like Indian neorealism and just movies about how life is really hard. So that was a film that my family watched weirdly, and I think comes back to what we talked about with regards to like holiday movies, even if it has a traditional format, tend to ring truer when there's like a melancholic sweat about the whole affair. You know, it's very much the circumstances are pretty bleak. It's like 1930s Hungary. The working class struggles are very much forefronted in that film. And the romance of it is like, isn't it romantic just to find someone at all? Like, just to find someone and have a regular life together. It's so unique, I think, for what's become a very bloated romance message around in a lot of holiday movies. But what's the first like weirdo holiday movie I enjoyed? I thought about Edward Scissorhands, because
Oh, yeah.
it was before I'd moved. I watched it when I was still pretty young. I moved to India when I was 10, and it was before that, and we were living in the suburbs, and I just felt like deeply that the depiction of Christmas was part of the general sort of dystopic mision of suburbia. Like, there was something disturbing being reflected about like upper middle class whiteness that I just, retained and like continued to think of it as a Christmas movie, even though it's not exactly.
Well, there are a fair amount of movies where they aren't Christmas movies per se, but the Christmas portion of them is so strong that they've become like All That Heaven Allows, I think, is it's my go-to example of that, where it's not, that movie is a Christmas movie or that movie is set at Christmas for maybe 15 minutes, maybe, but it's the most potent, memorable, special part of that movie.
Yeah.
And it has the biggest, prettiest, coolest ideas that Christmas section of that movie.
Television, the reflection in the
Television
television.
is incredible. Life's parade
Yeah.
at your fingertips.
Well, that's another way of thinking about what makes an alt Christmas movie or holiday movie is like it's alt in the sense that it's not necessarily intended to be a Christmas movie, but in which like the resonance of the holidays or the season being sort of conflated with the holidays has withstood the test of time. Like we actually another friend of ours, Roberta, was talking about how in our like whatever co-viewing online pandemic style movie club, she's like, okay, well, I don't mind if it's not a holiday movie as long as you pick a wintry film. I want something that just like reflects the season. And we watched the 1994 Little Women, which is a personal favorite and also a film that I definitely thought of around the holidays. It just like portrays such a like, to me, the vision of Christmas is this wintry New England austere frozen lakes, empty tables sort of thing that's so clear in the movie. And that's again, I think Zach, it opens with a Christmas carol, the singing of Christmas carols, but I think there's collectively like 7 minutes of Christmas in the
Sure.
film,
Yeah.
and it's still, I still think of it as appropriate for this time.
I'm
Ellie,
I-
okay, Ellie's trying to say something. Sorry.
Well, I was just curious where Gremlins falls on this scale for you guys, because I think of that as like a
Yeah.
Christmas movie.
Yes.
Like at its core,
I would agree.
small.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
agree.
like it isn't necessarily like, it is like different within that genre.
Gremlins is as far as I'm concerned, canon Christmas at this point. I forgot about Edward Scissorhands, but I think that kind of is too. I think that it's there's quite a bit of Christmas in there, but what the imagery of the film that's most memorable is the Christmas. So I think of that as a Christmas movie. When I was preparing for this, I was trying to think of the films to give me the kind of deepest sense of melancholy and time passage. I mean, a lot of people talk about Eyes Wide Shut as an important Christmas film. I think that it is. I don't think Eyes Wide Shut only takes place at Christmas. I think it's all about regeneration. And I mean, it's all about the time of year. The end of the year is a time when you're reflective. It's a time when you think about mortality and all kinds of change. And for me this year especially, that's really happening. So we revisited John Huston's The Dead, which, as you know, people here know, was a major inspiration for the movie that we made, Feast of the Epiphany, which is a Christmas movie too, actually. I guess that's true. But The Dead is, of course, adaptation of the James Joyce short story, which is maybe the greatest short story ever written. I don't know, that's just my opinion. But the movie is so perfect. It's John Huston's last film. It's so exquisitely sculpted. It's so effortlessly, confidently made that you can just kind of give yourself over to the craft, right? And this idea of, it's like the most perfect, for me, it's the most perfect story structure of all time. People go to a party, they talk about bullshit, and then at the end, they're like left with nothing but thinking about death. It's the most perfect story structure of all time. And I think that applies so well to the Christmas season, because you're just at the end of this long year. And my God, has any year ever seemed longer than this one? And all you're thinking about is what you've lost and what could possibly come next. And it's such a perfect film. If anybody out there hasn't seen that movie, I can't recommend it enough.
And The Dead also makes me, I mean, it's so also playing with the idea of like what's on the surface as opposed to what's below the surface, and then what happens in external circumstances and out in the world, as opposed to what happens privately in your home. And, you know, I talked about sort of missing the social aspect of Christmas, but that's a film that is a good reminder that it's not all roses, right? Like they come home from this dinner party and it's as if, you know, they've like deflated because of the effort of having to maintain a kind of fiction. That always really struck me about that, the moment of homecoming and then having to face yourself
in your past. So that's one thing that I always gravitate towards. It's catharsis. It's like a reckoning, and I have to kind of go through that experience once a year. I think that's why we revisit Christmas movies annually. I think that there's something in them that we have to kind of face every year, even if they're just bullshit. Like I was also thinking of Doug Liman's movie Go, when I was preparing for this, which I used to watch a lot when I was younger. I think it had, though that's actually a good queer Christmas movie right there, right? That's actually a movie that has ideas about queerness and the way queerness is represented and discussed within its characters. And for like 1999, it was fairly subversive, I think. But all takes place at Christmas for no reason, really.
I watched on Metrograph, they have a program of George Kuchar Christmas movies up right now. The evocatively titled Dingleberry Jingles.
Yeah.
As well as holidays and Christmas, New Year's '87. I think I also watched one, a Christmas movie from '86 that he made. But like, it's interesting thinking about the sort of social aspect or the role that Christmas movies usually play this time of year versus this year, where in some ways, like stepping into these kind of like social things in the movies is like the substitute for what we're able to do. And like the Kuchar movies are so, you know, his kind of almost diaristic style, the sort of like editing rhythms of just kind of like moving through these kind of like meals where he ends up with gas, or like parties where maybe he's like being kind of the more obnoxious guest. I mean, like there's just like this kind of truth to the experience of Christmas socializing to them that I found like very I don't know, comforting this time of year. And I also thought about like him, because he's like narrating so much of it, about how many Christmas movies kind of rely on that sort of first person narration. There's like a lot of like Christmas noirs and things where it's like all kind of like from this one person's perspective, sort of narrating their experience as separate from everything else that's going on or in sort of opposition to it. It seemed like in some ways like it made George Kuchar seem like this like noir hero or something. Like talking about what it was like to go to Abby's house for her Christmas party.
Which is kind of reminiscent of Blast of Silence.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Which is incredible. Noir Christmas movies. Also, in some ways, kind of like connecting the dots between Merry Christmas as well, that it's all on the streets of New York, 1961. Really like low budget, independent noir about a hitman from Cleveland who comes to New York for a job during the holidays and is like completely unable to connect with anyone else, and is sort of like going through the motions of seeing people or like walking through like Rockefeller Center and all this, but like just absolutely the most kind of like hard-boiled monologue, all in the second person. He's referring to himself as you, or the narrator is referring to you throughout as him. It's really incredible film. And I don't know if it's, I know that Criterion put out an edition. I don't know if it's public domain, but it is on Internet Archive streaming. I don't know if it's anywhere else streaming. Yeah.
Highly recommend. Very bleak.
Yeah, tough one.
Yeah, there's like great lines like train stations never let you forget that it's Christmas. It gives me the creeps. Like everything's for suckers. It's really good. Yeah.
But Nellie and Zach, you both mentioned Frank Tashlin's Susan Slept Here. And I would really love to hear you talk a little about that, because I watched it today because I'd never seen it. It is certainly a Christmas movie, but it is
yeah, it's definitely
it is it's deranged in a way.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to go into it.
They both needed a moment to emotionally prepare to talk about it.
Yeah, well, first of all, it's narrated by an Oscar statue on the sub.
Oh, how did I forget?
It's narrated by an Oscar statue. The main character is sort of like down on his, sort of like past his prime Hollywood screenwriter. It's Christmas time. It's Christmas Eve. And his friends, the police, come over because they have a Christmas present for him. And it's Debbie Reynolds, who is a juvenile delinquent.
Who's
they're just like, here she is. You said you wanted to write a juvenile delinquent movie. Here you go. And they're basically like, just don't fuck her, you know? And they fall in love.
I mean, it's like they don't
that's the movie. That's what
but
happens.
the machinations of them like falling in love. I mean, I can't like really remember, but it's something like he is in trouble because she's been staying in his house, even though like nothing's happened.
Yeah, he has a fiance.
So yeah, and he has a fiance.
And Debbie Reynolds is always answering the phone. Fiance is very
and at this period of time is seen as a viable romantic partner for this man, even though she is a teenager.
But they keep talking about how he shouldn't do it, right?
Well,
There's
and he sort of
around.
He
like,
has the
oh,
attitude
no,
of like, oh no, she's too young for me. She's just a kid.
Yeah,
but everybody else is like,
yes.
you two are gonna end up together.
Well, everyone is like, you got to do the right thing, stay on the up and up. He transports her across state lines.
There's a line in it's Dick Powell.
He's 50 at the time, playing 32.
Yeah.
I was going to say there's a line, I think, in like Gold Diggers of 33 or something, where someone is like trying to direct him, and he says like, don't talk to me like I don't know what I'm doing. I've been playing a juvenile for 15 years. And like, I was thinking about that. I was like, he is so old in it. And they
it's a weird choice for the plot.
34, but he is not 34. Yeah. It's not like remote. He's like old enough to be her grandfather. And like, it is. And then they like get married. He tricks her into marrying him to like so they can both stay out of jail.
Yeah,
it's
she's
that
gonna go to court or something, and he marries her.
There's a plot hole that her like mother had signed papers releasing her to get married for some reason recently. And he's like, oh, I can
really use this.
then he transports her across state lines. They get married in Vegas.
But she believes that he's really in love with her, so then she refuses to get divorced, and that's when they fall in love.
Yep.
So in a sense, a classic comedy of remarriage. Yeah.
This is a movie that I saw as a teenager because it came on TCM in the middle of the night, and I did not know what it was. It wasn't like, I'm going to sit down and watch this unique holiday film. I was just, everything was a surprise. Every new turn was confusing and horrifying, and it's really stuck with me.
There's also like all these people who work for him in the house that all have like something good. Like getting back to this idea of like side characters like can be kind of two-dimensional as long as they bring something to it. It's like one of them is like a drunken typist. One of them is like a male colleague who ends up joining the military.
Like they were in the Navy,
right?
Yeah, they were Navy buddies, and now the guy just hangs around and does stuff.
Yeah.
There's also like a Three's Company style. The buddy ends up taking Debbie Reynolds somewhere, and there's some like, Debbie Reynolds really loves eating pickles and strawberries.
Right.
And then Dick Powell gets wind of it, and he's like, "Oh my God, my friend got her pregnant."
My friend and
like a real like
17-year-old
misunderstanding in the movie. It also, I wanted to say it also totally has the like Tashlin touch. You know, it's like it's definitely by the same guy that directed The Girl Can't Help It. So like the colors are gorgeous. Like Christmas bulbs explode on their own as like, you know, punchlines to gags. It has that tone to it as well to make it even more bonkers.
I'm horrified that I haven't seen it. I will say that my mother has, for some reason, been talking about this movie to me since I was a kid, and I still haven't watched it. She says she's a huge Debbie Reynolds fan.
You weren't ready. You weren't old enough.
I own it on Blu-ray. Warner Archive.
And it's on demand right now.
What did you say, Nellie?
I think it's on TCM on demand right now.
I'm going to do it this week. There's no question about it.
You got it.
I did want, while we still have time, I wanted to mention a particular movie that Zach had brought up because I want to make sure that we touch upon this really strange Christmas subgenre, which is the Christmas horror movie. Christmas Evil.
Oh yeah, Christmas Evil is phenomenal.
So can you talk about this weird, when I first found out that there was even such a thing, it was when I was a kid and I watched the Tales from the Crypt HBO series, and they had that Robert Zemeckis episode with the deranged Santa Claus.
Yes, yeah. And that episode is also, I believe, in like the 1970s Amicus Tales from the Crypt. anthology film that they put out, or that same story. That story was adapted in that as well. But yeah, the Santa slasher is its own special thing. And Christmas Evil is it's like it's the Citizen Kane of the Santa slasher. It is Silent Night, Deadly Night is fun, but it's trash. You know, those movies are fun to watch if you want to watch trash, but they are absolutely trash. Christmas Evil is just it's a really well-made movie. There's like little touches of Fassbinder in there. The central performance, it's about a man who saw his parents having sex while his father was dressed as Santa Claus as a child, and it scarred him for life, and he developed a severe Santa fetish. So his entire apartment is covered in Santa stuff, and he works at a toy factory where everyone, and he just like lives for Christmas, and everyone is just like really mean to him, and he snaps. I think also, I don't want to remember correctly, I think before that, he like surveys the neighborhood children and writes down who's being naughty and who's being nice.
To help Santa out?
I think it's just his thing. I think it's just his thing. Sure. He's just really into Santa. Part of that is just like keeping tabs on everyone.
I love this as a concept because there's so many Christmas carols, like classic Christmas carols around catching Daddy as Santa Claus. Sure, I saw mommy kissing Santa Claus. Like, this is a very reasonable thing that could happen.
Also any sort of like hints to how sinister Santa might be in Christmas carols is just fully explored in Christmas Evil. He hits a point, he snaps, he goes full Santa, and then he starts, murdering the naughty. And it has, I don't want to spoil the ending, but it has an incredible ending. And the lead actor is Fiona Apple's dad. Yeah,
that's
right. Yeah,
this is good to know.
Yeah, that was a great mic drop moment.
I highly,
as far as a fun fact goes,
highly recommend Christmas.
You actually made Eric appear with that mic drop.
Yeah.
before, I mean, I know we're close to the end of the hour, so I'd love for you to tell us a little more about White Reindeer before we leave, because it's such a great contribution to exactly the topic that we're talking about.
White Reindeer is a Christmas movie that I made. Came out in 2013. It's about a woman whose husband dies unexpectedly right before Christmas. She has always really loved Christmas, and finds some stuff out about his life before he died that causes her to go down this sort of rabbit hole of sort of what he was up to in his previous life, and also sort of like other things that are sort of lurking under the surface of her suburban neighborhood, I guess is maybe a good description of it without saying too much. Yeah. It is, there are movies that are set at Christmas, and there are Christmas movies. And White Reindeer, to me, I set out to make a Christmas movie. The subject of the movie is Christmas. And everything else to me is sort of supporting it and guiding it through.
It's not for the whole family.
Not for the whole family. Not for the whole family. I think if you have AMC Plus, the AMC streaming service, I believe it's on there. And I think you can also rent it on iTunes and Amazon.
Everybody should check it out.
Yeah.
I remember seeing it at BAM Cinema Fest.
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. I think I was at the premiere.
I think that might be how we met.
That is how we met.
Yeah.
It was
2013.
What a year for films.
Eric, welcome back.
Thanks, Jeff.
What are your alternate Christmas movies?
Alternate?
Yeah, that's what we've been talking about.
Yeah. No, I just want to know how you wanted me to enter in here. I have a couple. I mean, here's the thing. I'm sort of a Christmas curmudgeon because everybody in my family is so into Christmas and always has been. And my sort of thing is to kind of resist it a little bit as much as I can, and I hold off till as late as I can in the season to pay any attention to it. but in order to sort of pull that pose off, you have to actually be in the room with your family. And now that that's not possible, it's actually, I'm feeling far more sentimental about the season than I normally do. And so I actually think that I'm actually going kind of through the front door this year, where I kind of plan today and tomorrow and through the weekend to watch more of the classics that we've been talking about, and less about, you know, sort of rebelling with the some of the alternates or the but I would say the most specific thing I could say about this, which has nothing to do with any like legitimate or alternate or whatever films about Christmas or films that feature Christmas, is that this Christmas tradition, which some of you know about, is on Christmas Eve when my family goes to church. I go to whatever theater is open in suburban New Jersey and watch whatever garbage is showing, and usually to absolutely nobody at all. And I find like the theater that's probably most likely to be as empty as possible, just to sort of have a very, to me, an actually profound experience of watching with myself whatever's watching. So like over the years, like films that I associate with Christmas now are films like, you know, Mortal Engines, Philomena, you know.
Well, it is about family connecting.
It is.
So,
Hitchcock,
you know.
the film called Hitchcock,
which is
one of the worst things I've ever seen in my entire life. But I loved it. Like
I
it
saw
just
Hitchcock
like,
on Christmas with my family.
wow.
Yeah.
So to me, it becomes like sort of like, no, this is something that means something to me. So I will watch as meaningless a thing as possible on this particular event, because this is how the day gets marked. Anyway, so I'm going to miss that. I usually do that on Christmas Eve, and I'm not going to do it tomorrow. What's that?
Was it not Cats last year? I think it
was. And last year was indeed Cats. Yes. I just feel like Cats send sense to derail conversations once it's mentioned. But yes, that is definitely a Christmas film for me now.
I'll say that I often like whatever's on TV this time of year, which ends up being like Harry Potter movies, Lord of the Rings movies, like that sort of thing. A few years ago, I was like, whatever, like had the TV on, and it was like the Lord of the Rings was on, and my dad was in the kitchen, and he was asking me to do something for him, like go to the store or something. And I was like, this is almost over, but you know, these things take forever when they're on television. Yeah. And then he was kind of watching it, but then at one point he just said, what was it exactly? He said, well, just let me know when Gandor gets married or whatever, and the movie ends. And I which is like the ultimate like not watching like thing. Like Gandalf is Gandor, and he thought that the Lord of the Rings would end when Gandor got married.
My response was delayed because I was like, "Who's Gandor? There's so many characters. Maybe I've just forgotten what I'm saying." And then it hit me.
Gandor gets married. Yeah.
Awesome. I would totally watch that movie.
Me too. It's not been mentioned, but because it's at this point, it's become kind of just almost tired to mention it. But for many, many years, I really did genuinely watch front to back the Star Wars Holiday Special, because it is something that I watched. I remember it's actually one of my first memories. I remember watching it, or I saw it, I should say, and then forgot all about it. It just sort of made its way into my brain. And then about 20 years later, I encountered other people who started referencing it, and then I realized it happened. And so when I actually then watched it in my 20s, it became something I watched every single year. It's not worth the 2 hours, and it is there's certainly more pleasurable ways of looking at camp objects, but there are still things about it that mean a lot to me.
But it's the only B. Arthur for the Christmas.
B. Arthur is the main reason to watch it. Yes.
I was going to say the Pee-wee Christmas special is a masterpiece.
Oh, yeah.
It is great.
Absolute masterpiece.
Forgot about that one.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah.
That's the thing I watch every single year.
One special speaking of specials that I watched recently, because I just started making my way back into the Alan Partridge catalog, and I watched all of Knowing Me, Knowing You, and I watched Knowing Me, Knowing Yule, the Christmas special, which is fantastic.
Knowing Me, Knowing Yule?
Yeah.
It's ABBA?
Well, the show Knowing Me, Knowing You is named after the ABBA song, and it's a fake talk show. And he had his Christmas special after it went off the air, which was his attempt to get a second season for the show, is called Knowing Me, Knowing Yule, starring Steve Coogan of Philomena. So there's a thread here.
Full circle.
Yeah.
I think it's funny that despite all of the terrible franchise crap you mentioned, Philomena got the biggest burst.
I think I watched Philomena on the plane shortly after. For the longest time, Christmas was the day that my sister and I would fly back to see our family because it's amazing. If you don't celebrate it, the airport is empty.
Yeah.
You fly like queens, you know, and it's just you and like Orthodox Jewish families stretch out in the seats. And that was also a really important movie viewing time for me. It was like on the airplane, yeah.
Of all these films, Philomena is definitely the best one of these Christmas films I saw.
Has everyone seen the, I think it's like the trip to Spain when Steve Coogan playing himself is constantly picking up women in Spain with the line, oh, I wrote the movie Philomena.
I think our toast today should be to Philomena. It's just so fun to say.
I think you're right. But also, thank you to Zach and Nellie for being here.
Thanks so much for having us, guys. This is great.
It was really Philomena of you to join us today.
What does that even mean?
I don't know. I'm workshopping it.
Big turnout from the reverse shotters today, which is wonderful, joining us for the holidays. Want to send a toast and thank you and a merry happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, to Chloe Lazat, Caroline Gollum, Chris Wisniewski, Justin Stewart, Nathan Kasu, Nicholas Rapold, Ryan Swen, Gina Telleroli, Shani Enelo, Edo Choi, and Mark Lukendall, all with us today.
Wow, thanks for coming, everybody.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, guys.
Philomena's everyone.